everybody, it's Jason Volha here, and now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And I just watched another video about Vince, aka V-Shrunk, trying to give tips on how to gain muscle mass quickly, as fast as possible. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skill in my craft a little bit, and let's talk about this. And you know, some people will try to say things who are very, very new to lifting. Will say, well, he's got a lot of muscle. No, he doesn't. He's got biceps, right? If I were to look at that guy as a serious lifter myself, I would think that that's a guy who he's a swimmer. He's got a swimmer's physique, and there's nothing wrong with that. If that's the look you want, then go for it. But you don't need to lift weights to get that. He doesn't have that much muscle. He has an amount of total muscle mass on his body that you, as a rank novice who's never trained before, could reach within 6 months in the gym. Maybe 3 months. Other than the biceps, right? Other than the biceps. And his strength is indicative of that when you watch his bigger lifts. He has novice level strength levels. And every study that's ever looked at this shows that size and strength are enormously correlated together. So he doesn't have that much muscle, and so accordingly, some of his advice on this actually is just flat wrong. It's flat wrong, and we need to understand what he gets wrong. And I only got through the first 2 tips. I'm like, okay, this is enough that we need to address these points. We need to address these points, and I want people to understand when I make that statement, I'm not saying this guy, for a lot of people, doesn't have their ideal physique. What I'm saying is they don't need to train for 3 years to reach that physique, right? He's mostly just leanness. In other words, a lot of his advice, when I'm listening to his muscle building advice, it's fat loss advice. It's not going to build muscle. In fact, most of you're not going to gain 15, 20 pounds of muscle following the advice that he's giving. Not in your first year. Absolutely not. Won't happen. His advice will interfere with that. And before he even got to the tips, what I thought was interesting is that he said, well, you know, you're not going to gain muscle unless your macros and your diet is perfect and everything. Well, no, that's not true, man. Actually, muscle building diets are some of the easier ones to do. You can be a lot less rigid in your macros. What requires rigid macros is losing body fat while retaining muscle. Now, that's true. Your protein intake better be really high. You better be careful of deficiencies or anything getting too low, like your dietary fat getting too low, things like that. That's stuff that you need to be aware of. You're trying to hold on to as much muscle tissue as possible while losing 20 or 30 pounds of body fat so that you can keep your metabolic rate as high as possible. Yeah, that absolutely requires tight macros. You want to know what requires even tighter macros is recomposition, right? Meaning gaining a little bit of muscle while you're losing fat. Yeah, he would be right. He would be right there. That's absolutely true. But this is what he is. He's a fat loss guy. He's not a muscle gain guy. He doesn't know anything about gaining muscle. He doesn't really have an appreciable amount of muscle, and it's reflected in his tips that he really doesn't know how to do it. And that's okay, but that's why we correct it. But does he know how to get lean? Of course he does. And the funny thing is that his tips will actually help get you leaner. They're not going to help you gain muscle very well. But I see a lot of stuff, and it's like, yeah, that'll burn through a hell of a lot of calories. But you're not going to get big. So we get over to the points. Part of it, he started saying, you know, you need to pick the right exercises. You need to have a plan when you go to the gym. Well, yeah, obviously, you need to have a fully structured program. That's what I thought was weird, is that, you know, he needs to say that, that you need to have exercises selected. Then he goes on about volume for tip 2. And that's the one I stopped on. Well, yeah, you need to have a fully structured program. I mean, hopefully everyone out there understands that if you do not have a structured program that's at least 12 weeks long, ready the day you walk into the gym, would you really expect to gain much muscle? Now, given the things that he said, I wouldn't use one of his silly-ass programs because they're not going to get you there. But he is right. You better have the right exercises selected. But there's tons of us who offer free muscle building programs. I have free programs, free. That there are thousands of people out there who have run and have said, yeah, man, I gained 15, 20 pounds of muscle in this program. Yeah, I have free. I don't charge for them. They're free. I have a free programs playlist. Go check them out. That's it. They're free. I don't charge for them. Thousands of guys have gained 15, 20 pounds of muscle in some of my novice programs. They're free. Go check them out. But he is right. Exercise selection matters. But the thing that really bothered me, what is it that he says? So he starts talking about picking the right exercises, and then he's saying, well, you know, and picking them in the right order. Like, you don't want to, if you're going to have a pull day, you don't want to do your biceps before your back. Well, yeah, I'm going to agree with that, but If you're talking about gaining muscle mass quickly, why would you have a pull day? Why are you splitting your training up at all? Novice lifters need to be hitting pretty much every big muscle every time they walk into the gym. Why? Because when you are not using any anabolics, let's get this clear. Study after study after study has confirmed this. If you are not using any anabolic drugs, you're not pinning yourself. Your muscles only grow from anywhere up to about 28 to 48 hours after you train it. So in other words, if you train your chest or your back or your legs, they are at most going to grow for 2 days. Within 48 hours, you are completely done growing. You're not going to grow again until you train it again and recover from it again. It means you shouldn't be going more than 2 or 3 days without training each muscle group. Now, we're going to get to that. Some people are like, oh my God, there's no way I can do 20 sets for chest. Yeah, well, there's no way you can recover from 20 sets of chest either. So that's not where we need to be going. Any proven effective novice programs out there do you see? Do you see them only having one chest day? You see them only training your back once a week? You see them training your legs only once a week? And do you see them have you doing 15 or 20 sets? No. No, you don't. Silly ass bodybuilder programs that pro-type bodybuilders run, the guys on drugs run, who they're trying to trickle down and tell you to train this way. Yeah. But you're not going to put on 20 pounds of muscle in your first year with those silly ass programs because you simply do not have enough muscle growth time. You don't have enough. If you're doing too much volume for a muscle at any given time, you're going to shorten your growth window because your recovery window goes longer, right? Your recovery window gets longer when you've already limited your growth time, and so you're going to have a bigger window of time after you train to where you're not growing. And when that recovery window starts exceeding the muscle protein synthesis uptime, guess what? You don't get any bigger that week. You might grow, you might not that week. It's going to vary. It's going to depend on your food intake and maybe how many hours of muscle growth you ended up getting. So the mere fact that he's talking about a pull day, now, I'm going to tell you right now, as a novice lifter, you better, at least every 2 to 3 days, you better be hitting your chest, your back, your legs, all those big muscles, or they're not going to grow. They're not going to grow adequately. That's why most novice programs are full body programs 3 days a week. That's for a reason. Every single respectable coach in the world who, when they want to start someone and they want to get them big quickly, what do they have them do? Full body programs 3 days a week for novices. That is the standard in the strength and conditioning world for bulking up novice athletes around the world, in every country, in almost every single sport. Only more advanced people even go to a 4-day upper-lower split, right, after you've built a base. And that's your other really common one. Do you guys see any serious athletes being coached with anything other than those two basic setups? No, you don't. You don't. Why? Because the other shit doesn't work. It only works if you're on drugs or you plan on staying really, really, really small. You don't see any serious athletes being bulked up that way by coaches who make their living on if their athletes get bigger and stronger. There's a reason for that. They can't do that silly shit. So you have all that. Then the point he jumps to, he's like, well, and also, like for me, don't do too much volume. I agree. I mean, volume is one of the primary drivers of hypertrophy. Absolutely. But then he says, like for me, I come in and for my chest, I just get in and out of the gym. He's like, I do 5 exercises with 4 sets and a lot of sets to failure. It's like, oh my God, Vince, that's why you don't have a chest. I mean, seriously, you guys want to know how to get a big chest? Get your bench up to 300, your pause bench, get your standing press up to 200. Now, novice lifters are going, that's crazy. No, it's not. No, it is not. Every single one of you guys out there, if you're willing to eat enough food and you're willing to train hard enough, every single one of you can reach those numbers drug-free, barring maybe like 10% of you don't have the genetics to do it. If you train hard, train correctly, eat enough, rest enough, you can get to a 300 bench and a 200 overhead press. Have you ever seen a lifter who can do those, get pause bench and come down and touch your chest on the standing press, who has a small chest? No, you don't. Vince has a small chest, and what's he doing, 20 sets? Anyone look at the data out there? Is anyone aware that actually when they have studies looking at volume, that most of them, not all of them, but some of them are showing that when you start exceeding about 10 to 12 sets for a muscle, like your chest, in a single workout that you actually end up gaining less muscle. Go back to that recovery versus growth time window. You actually gain less muscle. Furthermore, training to failure. You guys are aware that stopping 1 rep short of failure has been shown in every single study to put on just as much muscle mass. Just as much muscle, but you recover faster, less likely to get hurt. So you've got a guy talking about for years he's been doing 20 sets for his chest, taking sets to failure, who has no chest. Is that a coincidence? No. Now, if somebody's trying to lose a bunch of fat, I mean, doing 20 sets of big exercises, hell yeah, that'll burn a lot of calories. I mean, that's a good way to strip some body fat down. But you look at someone like Vince, and then it should be making sense at that point. You look at him and go, man, this guy's really lean, but he's not big. And then it's like, oh yeah, man, 20 sets. 20 sets for your chest. 20 sets for your back in a single day. Well, that's why he's lean. He's burning through a hell of a lot of calories. And if he's tracking his food perfectly, and he's eating those little banana and peanut butter sandwiches he eats as a snack, yeah, he's definitely losing some fat. And now that shows, right? That shows. You can look at him and say, that's a lean guy. That's a guy who knows how to burn through some calories. Absolutely. I'll give credit there. But he is tiny and weak as shit. And his advice for gaining maximal muscle or gaining muscle quickly, it's obvious when he gives the advice of why he is tiny. But it's also obvious why the guy's really lean. You know, fair play. But for those of you who are trying to gain muscle, this is terrible advice. Absolutely terrible advice. You're going to gain muscle at a third of the rate that you should be gaining it. That's not quick. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.